Alive. There it is.
It's alive.
It's alive. Welcome to the Backpack Show. Sitting in the throne today, which is a horrible idea.
It's not either.
It probably is going to be.
You don't have to clean the whole place. You can't see nothing.
Could you try again?
No!
Stop talking to your watch.
Siri just... All right, listen.
Guess what?
Monkey butt.
We have a game developer on
We have
today.
a game developer. We have
Nick Pettit. He's a game developer with ship titles on PC and Mac, PlayStation, XR headsets, mobile, everything. And now he's part of Buck.co, which is not known for games.
Yeah, Buck's a design type company. So the fact they have a small, tiny little game division, kind of the shoebox inside of Hallmark.
I love it. It's like their secret weapon.
We're going to get the chance to talk about his new upcoming title.
Let's Revolution.
Let's Revolution.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
So excited.
Yes. Hey, do you know who loves video games? Ducks. You can get your own StreamYard by going to cbrogan.net/StreamYard. You can make your own damn duck game. Let's Revolution, by the way, features quite a few ducks.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of hidden.
They're very revolutionary.
Yeah. You have to find the mustaches on the ducks.
Vive le duck.
It's a whole
How
thing.
do you say duck in French?
Canard.
Oh, there you go. Vive le canard.
La danse de canard. cbrogan.net/online if you want your own .online domain. It's even cheaper than the $8.99 they paid for letsrevolution.com. It is $1. You can get your own .online domain.
For a year.
Yeah, for a year. Yeah. But, you know, how long do you need a game website?
So cbrogan.net/online. Enter the code Chris.
Lowercase is fine.
In all caps.
No.
It has to be in all caps. I don't know why.
Listen, code. It's code.
I don't know. That's how they did.
Look at that. It is.
Oh, it's your mom.
My father's wife, who gave birth to me, Diane Brogan. Chloe, congratulations on your latest Notion certification.
You can get certified in Notion?
Evidently. Steve Brogan, that's my dad.
You didn't use any of your Scottish. Usually you would. You'd be like, you did, bro.
I don't even know what we're on about. Let's grab Nick. We're going to talk about a game.
You have to put our thing back.
Oh, jeez, Louise.
So Nick Pettit actually worked with my husband Dan at Treehouse years ago.
Yeah, which Nick still has a Treehouse video on his LinkedIn page. We'll talk about that.
Smart. I'm really excited about that.
All right. Nick, welcome on board. Yeah, your LinkedIn still shows an old Treehouse video about technology trading or something.
Yeah. I suppose that's still there, isn't it?
You didn't go with your origin story. That would have been the move.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. I used to work at Treehouse with Dan. Had a great time there for almost a decade. But yeah, now I'm at Buck.
So Brogan had all kinds of questions about your game,
and
he almost couldn't wait to ask.
Whatnot. Yep.
Yeah, and I had to be like, wait for the show.
Wait for the show. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of things, but first off, one of the things I'm going to do is I want to just show a tiny bit of your YouTube video demo thingy. What do they call those? Game teasers. So let's just watch this for a sec.
Me?
At the risk of ruining so much fun, I'm going to stop it there because I could just jam on that for a while.
Yep.
Nick, I have 1,500 questions. So I guess one I'll start at is, so I'm familiar with your Find the Mustache game from a while back and Neptune Flow. There are, in all three cases of those three games, there's a very different aesthetic. There's different stuff at work here. let's start at Let's Revolution and kind of work our way backwards, like someone might. Uh, how do you decide I'm going to make assets that look somewhere between like Adventure Time and Clarence kind of animation comedy? Do you start with your story? Do you start with the game mechanics? When you decide to put a video like this together, what do you think you're going to start with in this?
Sure, yeah. So the reason Let's Revolution looks so great is because I had nothing to do with the art. Uh, I work at this company called Buck, and they're known for design and kind of high key advertising. If you go to buck.co, they do a much better job of kind of giving you the Don Draper pitch on everything that they do in their work. But Buck is fantastic. They're known for design. I mean, that is their bread and butter. And so when we were thinking about getting into games, we knew that that was going to be obviously a really important element. And one of the nice things about making games at Buck as just a creator of games is that it's going to look great no matter what we decide to do on our tiny games team. We know that the design is kind of a fixed point. It's gonna look awesome. And so the hard part then becomes, well, how do you make a great game? But I guess to answer your question, I mean, how did we decide on kind of a 2D aesthetic? We actually had several games prior to this that we shelved. So I've been at Buck since 2019, and I was the first person on the games team there. But we had a couple of false starts and a few side steps. We were working on a very ambitious 3D game, and it kind of just collapsed under its own weight. I hope we do revisit it at some point because the IP and story world is super cool, but we were just trying to do way too much. And so when we got into 2022, or we were approaching 2022, we said, you know what, we want to try to scope something that we can actually ship. And part of that was doing a 2D game, because with 3D, there's so many things you have to consider. And essentially, the color of a pixel on screen is a very calculated result. It's the result of lighting and textures and screen effects and all these different things coming together. And that's really hard to art direct. So our art directors and creative directors needed something that would be WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So with a 2D game, what our artists are creating in Illustrator is exactly what appears in Unity and in the final game. So they're able to create things and know how they're going to be presented, and nothing gets lost in translation. So that's a big part of why we ended up going 2D, is we were trying to capture just lightning in a bottle, essentially, and figure out, okay, how do we take these artists' amazing talents and distill them into a game we can actually get out the door.
So the purpose of the game is the game, as opposed to another creative agency who might want to use it for marketing or something.
Yeah. So for us, we don't have any super specific KPIs or key performance indicators that we try to attach to our internal research projects. I mean, as soon as it starts generating revenue, then it becomes kind of a different conversation. But presently, it's meant to be a creative outlet for people working at Buck, because the vast majority of people at Buck are working on client projects. And while we do really amazing work, that can sometimes be draining on creativity, where you're not necessarily always getting to do the thing that is your favorite. And so by having other outlets like streaming animations and games, hopefully it leads to better retention with employees. But if we make money along the way, or we get accolades or whatever, then that's cool.
It's amazing. I've never heard that.
No, yeah. What's the you just announced one of them, and I'm blanking on it. 10,000 people added to the game to the wish list in the first.
Yes.
First
Yeah.
what?
Well, so Let's Revolution
And what's
is
a wish
game.
list for people who aren't
Yeah.
familiar with it?
Yeah, so Let's Revolution is a game for PC and Mac, and we're releasing through Steam, which is the largest digital distribution platform in the world outside of the App Store. And so Steam is how people play games on PC, and you can also play on Mac. So on Steam, a really important metric for people that are releasing games is wish lists. So if you're a player of games on Steam and there's a game that you see that you like, you can basically add it to your wish list. And whenever the game is released or whenever the game goes on sale, if it's on your wish list, you'll get an email about it. So it's almost the equivalent of signing up for like a newsletter or a drip campaign, right? So wish lists on Steam are really, really important. It's not necessarily an indicator of sales, but it is sort of a barometer of like, okay, how many people are interested in this? How many people are you going to be able to email and get into their inboxes anytime you have a sale running or when the game releases? So getting wish lists is important. And so we were able to get about 10,000 wish lists, and the majority of that happened within the last 2 weeks. And that was a surprise to us. We did kind of have the arbitrary goal of getting about 10,000. And that kind of comes from a couple of different factors. I mean, one of them is just getting into Steam's algorithm. So when you're on Steam, it will kind of present you with different games the same way as any recommendation algorithm like YouTube or whatever. And as you might imagine, that's based on things like wish lists. That's one of the factors that feeds into that. And I'm sure a whole bunch of other things, games that people play that are related to that game and whatever. So, but anyway, kind of having some momentum and velocity there is important, not just in the cumulative number of wish lists, but also in the speed at which you are getting them. So getting them within, a 2-week time frame is really, really good. But yeah, so we wanted to get 10,000 just to well, we wanted to get 10,000 just to get within the sweet spot of that algorithm. And the way we did it was by participating in online events. So we tried a couple of different strategies. We were kind of starting out just like rubbing two sticks together to create fire, because Buck is not known for games. We haven't released any games. This is our debut game. And so we're kind of planting our flag in the ground. And Buck is also not super well known outside of FANG companies, our clients, and kind of the design and animation community. So it's not really something that's familiar to people that are playing games. So we started out just, on social media, just kind of seeing like if any of our cachet with other things would carry over. And some of that did. So we were posting on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter almost daily from about April. And that, frankly, didn't do a whole lot. We were posting a little bit on our main Buck accounts, but primarily we're posting daily on accounts for Let's Revolution. But we got wish lists by participating in events. The first one was actually back in March. It was an event called Mix, which I think stands for like Media Indie Exchange. I believe that's correct. And Mix is both an online and in-person event. So we submitted to be included. We got accepted, and the online event happened on like a Friday, and then that weekend we were in person in San Francisco at an event at that was a part of GDC, the Game Developers Conference, which is a much larger event for game developers.
Let's go into that for a minute. How did
sure.
that go? Like, what was the experience at GDC? Because again, like you're saying, you're an agency, so you're in so many ways an outsider in a very judgy, very suspicious group of people. Like, you know, they're used to anybody. If you've got more than 4 people on your team, then you're like EA, the enemy. You know, so like, how did you get in there, and like, how did that work?
Yeah, so I mean, getting into these events is fairly straightforward, but they are selective. So you just apply online and, you know, hope for the best. And like with any business relationship, a warm connection is better than a cold connection. And but we were just kind of like applying anywhere that we could. And so when we got there, though, you know, doing the event in person was very exciting for us, because it was the first time we were seeing anyone in person that had never played the game before go up to it and check it out. So we had a demo running, we had a booth, and it was very exciting because people were really responding to it. And I think over the course of, you know, just a couple hours, what we learned was that if we could get the game in front of people, they liked it, you know. And so that was our that became our new challenge, is just how do we get the game in front of people, because it has a lot of elements of Minesweeper, and people were catching on to that without us even saying the word Minesweeper. They started playing it. They were going through the tutorial and they were saying, "Oh, it's like Minesweeper." Like, "Oh man, oh, I get it now. It's like, it's roguelike Minesweeper. I get it." And we were really thrilled to be hearing those kinds of responses, because we were, you know, up to that point, we weren't totally sure if people were going to get it. I mean, we had pretty good tutorials and stuff. We had done some QA with an external company and you know, got some good feedback there, but it was still kind of an unproven quantity. So anyway, doing an in-person event was very exciting, and I highly recommend doing that, if nothing more than just getting the kind of visceral feedback that you're just not going to get in like an online comment, or especially not in a review.
I want to get to the game itself and what makes it so appealing. But before we do, I just want to point out that your company, this is like a passion project for employees, right? This is not tied to a client thing. So
Correct.
Not only is the development and the promotion of it not going towards a client bill bottom line, but also the live event at which you promote it and at which it catches on is not. So every once in a while, you have to invest in things without a clear, you know,
it's not a direct ROI
to profit,
yeah,
so that you can see amazing things.
My guess, Nick, tell me if this is true. My guess is that one of the ways that this benefits Buck is that they can go, "Oh my gosh, look at the things you can do with, you know, a really incredible team, and, you know, with Unity as the back engine, and with all those sorts of things." Like, is that part of it, is just to say, "Look at me now"?
Yeah.
Well, right. I mean, part of it is just kind of the cachet of it, but I mean, it's certainly an opportunity to flex our capabilities and say, "Hey, look, we can make games, we can do things in Unity, we can create these, frankly, pretty complicated projects that are both complicated technically and complicated creatively, because game design is very different than visual design. It is not the same thing at all. Very different disciplines. And so Yeah, I think it's really just an opportunity to stretch and say, okay, we can do these 30-second ad spots, we can create design systems for FANG companies, but are we able to stretch that creative muscle into new areas? Because you know, uh, change is the nature of technology, and we live in a very technologically driven world, and design is not relegated to like print anymore. And so, but that continues past screens and goes into the space of like AR and XR, or the personality of a chat bot or something. Like it extends in so many other areas. And so just figuring out how we can be creative in these spaces that demand creativity is really important, just so that we stay relevant, so that we're able to take on work, so that we're able to say yes to things, because we've done it. It's a proven quantity, and it's especially great to prove that out with real dollars and products and revenue.
I want to get real nerdy about Let's Revolution, but I want to do that I want to like 2 of your other games as part of a retrospect. So Find the Mustache is an AR game where it's really simple graphics, the kind of a Where's Waldo-y kind of a thing. It's not an especially tricky game, but it's a great proof of concept of AR XR kind of stuff where you could say this is kind of a neat implementation you could do in the real world. Neptune Flux.
Neptune Flux. Yep.
Dang, I called it flow earlier, and I know why I called it flow, because that's one of the skills in Let's Revolution that I thought was so crazy. Flow
yes,
state.
It is.
So we got to go back, but the Neptune Flux it was like a way better, prettier. Well, better's that's the wrong way to say it. It's like if there was actually something worth doing in Subnautica, it's like if Myst were made 20 years after it was made, kind of a thing, because there's all those game element mechanics of like puzzle gaming, even though it feels like a open world adventure kind of experience glued to puzzles. So I see all of that. Then you get to this, and like you said, it's Minesweeper with extra steps, to quote a Rick and Morty. I loved, and I'm jumbling so many things, Nick, but you're following because you made this all. You could play this game in easy mode and just fart around and just like have a good time with it, or you could be nuts and make it like an RPG and do stuff with it.
Yeah.
What part? This is where I get to ask you a question. What when you decide, I think I'm going to do it like this? You mentioned you'd shelved a bunch of games. What part of you is the game designer that says, here's how this is going to have repeat playability, here's how this is going to have stickiness? Like how much of the game stuff are you bringing to this? And then very much like how much of this is just you showing off sort of design and coding chops and whatnot? You see what I'm asking? Like, are you the showrunner, or are you the producer who has to make it all real? Both.
Well, so like I said, Buck is a much larger organization consisting of hundreds of people all around the world. Our core games team is myself. So I am the lead Unity developer, Unity being the game engine that we use. So I write, a large chunk of the code. And then we also have a gameplay engineer, and he's freaking fantastic. My job would be so much harder without him. We have a producer, and then we also have a creative director. And our creative director is squarely in the realm of games. He's coming from doing games at Bad Robot and doing games at That Game Company. That Game Company is known for the games Sky and Journey. And so he is our game designer. But our gameplay engineer also did a fair bit of design. And we really, we talk about game design all the time. We're always playing around with ideas and kicking things around. And so in the case of this game, we were actually very careful about the design because initially when we started at Buck, well, each one of us, the assumption, I think, was kind of that, well, Buck is so great at visual design. We can just make a very simple game or kind of, copy an existing category or something like that and just kind of put really pretty graphics on it and maybe it'll sell. Maybe that's a formula that will work. And it turned out that that was just totally not the right problem to be thinking about. The problem that we had just as an organization was figuring out how do we make something that is not just going to be this runaway creativity exercise that has no deadline and no budget or whatever, and just kind of grows out of control into this thing that is just unshippable. It just has massive scope creep. And so with Let's Revolution, we said, okay, we need to make a really good game, but it also needs to be something that is scoped to approximately, something, right? So we decided to have a time scope.
Someday.
Right. We said, you know what, we don't want to just like set a budget and blow through the budget. We set a time goal of a year. We went a little bit past that, like most creative projects like this do, but in approximately a year, we had something that's very close to what you see today. And the way we did that was by creating a rubric. So we had a whole bunch of creative ideas as a team, and that drew upon our experience and just general game literacy and just our passion for games. And we threw down all these different ideas. And initially, we were just kind of excited about some of them for different reasons. We're like, oh, that would have great replayability. Oh, that would be fun to work on, or whatever. And what we realized is that we needed a really, at least a really clear way to take these subjective ideas and compare them to one another, because some of them, like you said, they're apples to oranges. It's like, like I worked on Neptune Flux. Here's this deep sea adventure game versus like Find the Mustache, which is this like AR hunt and find game. It's like, how do you even compare those ideas? Like if you had those two ideas before even making the game, which one should you work on? How do you make that decision? And so that's what we set out to develop. We created this rubric, and we did it kind of, I forget which app we used. It was one of like the Kanban style apps, sort of similar to like Trello or, some of the Airtable views or whatever.
And if you don't know what a rubric is, it's like laying out points to help you decide. Like in grading, we'd use one to be like, a B is when you have a few mistakes, but overall the thing's pretty solid. A is when it's perfect. C is like, all right, it exists and it does the minimum, kind of. So you're figuring out what will make it exceptional and worth doing versus what will make it just a thing you did.
It's the criteria, or basically a way of assigning points to different aspects. And so that's what we did. So we had cards that were like, is the game multiplayer? Is this a game that's going to look really good in thumbnails? When you're looking at like YouTube videos or Twitch streams or, scrolling through a Steam library. Is this a game that is going to be fun to work on? And some of those things added points. So we said like, okay, if a game idea has this quality, it's like +2 points or something. And if it's this other thing, it's like minus 1 point. Because some of the things, like, we're excited about the idea, but we say, oh, well, for that idea to really work, it's going to have to be on consoles and it's going to have to be multiplayer. And like the combination of those two things is like becomes like a -5 or something. And it's like, all right, that's I mean, that's going to really pull it down versus the other ideas. And
You
so
better keep that rubric tuned up, because now once clients start seeing this game, they're going to want some of their own.
That's
It's-
interesting to think
Yeah.
about.
that's
Why
certainly the
wouldn't
case.
you?
Yeah.
Nick, I'm gonna rip you out of that question into a new one. And
Yeah, no problem.
You're going to rip him a new one?
I'm gonna rip you a new one. So there's you're inside a big company and you're the tiny little division of Hallmark inside the big company. There's like 4 or so of you, but you have the firepower of a battleship
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
When I look at this game, Let's Revolution feels like those games that people are like, they were a dream product for somebody, like Super Meat Boy was, or Battle Block Theater. And like, there's all these different kinds of FNAF or Undertale or something like that. There's these dream games that were made by people that became merch and shows. And there's a FNAF movie coming.
Yeah.
My dreamer heart is like, I can totally see there being plushies for Let's Revolution. I can see this being like a big thing. I can see there being a Let's Revolution movie, and like Jared Leto would play the guy, and but like, you just punch a hole in that, like pop my balloon, Nick, because there's no way that this goes there in your world, right? Because this is just like some heartless design company full of evil villains.
Heartless design companies like to make money.
They're evil.
They would love merch.
No. So what do you? So tell my dreamer self I'm full of it, because there's no way you're going to go that way.
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen, because it's still kind of. I mean, we still have $0 in revenue for this game, right? So there's all kinds of directions that it could go after release, and all kinds of directions we could go as a team. We could just start working on the next game. We could do DLC for this game. Who knows, right? And sure, part of that is if it ends up being a real indie darling or smash hit, I don't know. Maybe merchandising is in the future. I truly have no idea. But I mean,
it's going to be like when a metal band hits with a ballad, and then they're really mad because everybody loves the ballad.
I mean, personally, I would love that. But I think the thing that you are catching on to is a term that we call a whiff of narrative. And so, for example, if you play a game like Tetris, there's just these pieces, right? There's no personality to them. It's kind of whatever. Buck is a company that really loves characters. They really love storytelling. That's what they do, and they do it in these little tiny juicy bites. And so that was part of our missteps when we were working on some of the prior games that we shelved. Is that we didn't always leave room for character. And one of the things that we learned was that, like, oh yeah, Buck is going to inject character into these things no matter what. And so when we are coming up with ideas, when we are creating these designs, we need to leave room for Buck to create this pantheon of characters similar to like Super Smash Brothers or Mario Kart or whatever, where there's all these places for characters to exist. And in our game, that's the classes that you can play. That's also the enemies, and just kind of the whimsical style.
That's how the movie will work.
Yeah.
Not going to be a Candy Crush movie.
It's not going to be, even Angry Birds, let's say, but
yeah,
right. And so with putting in a whiff of narrative, we didn't want to make a narrative driven game. So this isn't a game where you have like dialogue options and you're kind of navigating a linear or non-linear story. But there is a story world in which it takes place. There's places and there's characters, and in the game you do see what we call barks, which are like these little bits of dialogue that fire off if a given condition is correct. Like if you're playing a certain class and you encounter a certain enemy, it'll say, "Oh, if it isn't so and so," right? And a whiff of narrative is kind of the difference between like, a full meal and like a scented candle, of like in terms
try
of
not
like
to eat scented candles, but yeah.
I mean,
right.
you try,
It's
doesn't
like
mean you don't.
it's like it's there. It's not there, but it's also not the focus.
Sure.
So in injecting the game with some amount of narrative, sure, it absolutely leaves room for characters that people might get attached to and might
Get
want
first
plushies
dibs
of.
on the plushies, Nick.
Yeah, we want to look at the plushies. July 19th, this thing is coming out, at least according to your little teaser trailer. Is that still the release date?
July 19th, yeah.
Don't want to get anybody in trouble or anything like that. I mean, that's around the corner. That's a couple of 3 weeks out. So best of luck to you on that one.
You have to pick a person of the day.
Oh, I do have to pick a person of the day.
I don't
It's
get to.
funny because I was thinking, well, hang on. So I have to hit this button over here.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Speaking of games, that is the voice of Tim Kitzrow, who did the voices for things like NFL Blitz, NBA Jams, and so on. He has a word, boom shakalaka, which became
Like
synonymous with basketball because of his weirdness.
So if you need voice talent,
Tim
you know where you
Kitzrow,
can get some.
He's available. Also, JRT. Person of the day is Dean. Dean, good job. Thank you. So you had to jump on a call and say hi. But when you said, I officially have zero talent after seeing this,
It's easy to feel that way.
Everybody all felt the same thing. So that's why you're our person of the day. We do have to ask one question, which is the backpack question. We've asked every single guest who's been here. This could be something, what goes in your backpack? This could be something physical, like, I don't know, avocado. It could be something metaphorical, like hope for the future. Kerry, what's a physical thing you could add to a backpack?
Ooh, extra set of teeth.
Oh,
DJ Cumberbund.
You never know when you need
YouTube,
an
got
extra set of teeth.
I was like, you never know.
How about something metaphorical?
Kindness. Ariel Helvetica, burlesque performer, put kindness.
She put
in
kindness.
The backpack. At the time, I laughed in her face, but it wasn't because of what she said. It was just, it was holdover.
Nick Pettit, what are you going to add to our backpack today?
I would say just openness, or being open to ideas, open to experience. Because I think one thing that happens, or at least has happened to me as I've become more and more experienced, is it's very easy for me to draw upon my experience and be dismissive of something and say, oh, well, that's not going to work because I tried it on this thing and like, here's what happened and it was horrible. When I first arrived at Buck, I, had a lot of preconceived notions about how games are made and the one true way and golden path or whatever to make games. But Buck is a very different kind of company. They had, they have Emmy awards up on the walls, and I thought, well, I don't have any Emmys, so maybe I better listen to these people. And even though they've never made games before, maybe we'll make games in a very different way that will be new and different and creative. And so that's what I would say, is just like being open to doing things differently, even if it's not the way you would necessarily do it, because you might stumble into this whole different plane of awesomeness that you didn't know was there.
You're Doc Hudson. You need to leave room for Lightning McQueen.
Well, last day of Pride, I think openness is a really good thing. Last day of Pride month is a great thing to throw in the backpack, some openness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great.
Let'sRevolution.com.
Let'sRevolution.com. My grandmother, by the way, would have really appreciated this game. She was a very early player of games like Pong. I could say that the first interesting French swear word I learned came from Pong. She said...
It's a pretty good first swear.